The clock on the wall showed 6:47 a.m. when Maria pushed through the service entrance of the Hartwell Grand Hotel. Her feet already hurt, and her shift hadn't even started yet. The bus ride from her neighborhood took an hour and 15 minutes, but she never complained. This job paid better than most, even if it meant being invisible. She tied her apron strings twice, the way she always did, and checked her reflection in the small mirror near the staff lockers. Hair pulled back tight. Makeup minimal. Smile ready, even though no one would really see it. In 3 years of working here, she'd learned exactly how to blend into the background. That's what they wanted. That's what they paid for. The Hartwell Grand wasn't just any hotel. It was the kind of place where senators celebrated birthdays, where CEOs closed million-dollar deals over breakfast, where old money met new money and pretended they were the same. The chandeliers in the lobby cost more than Maria would make in 5 years. Maybe 10. Table 7 needs water, her supervisor called out as Maria walked into the main dining room. She grabbed a pitcher and moved smoothly between the white-clothed tables. A woman in a pearl necklace didn't even glance up as Maria filled her glass. A man in a tailored suit kept talking on his phone, waving his hand for her to hurry up. This was normal. This was every day. But there was one room in the hotel that made Maria's chest tighten every time she walked past it. The Grand Ballroom. And right in the center of that ballroom, positioned perfectly under a spotlight even during the day, sat a Steinway piano. Black and glossy, with keys that probably felt like butter under your fingers. She'd never touched it. Staff weren't allowed. There was actually a rule about it in the employee handbook. Service personnel are not permitted to interact with guest amenities, including, but not limited to, the grand piano in the ballroom. She'd read that line so many times she had it memorized. Sometimes, during her lunch break, Maria would stand in the doorway and just look at it. She'd imagine what it would feel like to sit on that bench, to rest her hands on those keys, to let music fill that enormous room. Then she'd shake her head, finish her sandwich, and get back to work. What none of these wealthy guests knew, what her supervisor didn't know, what even her co-workers didn't know, was that Maria had once been different. 7 years ago, she'd been a student at Juilliard, full scholarship. Her professor had called her gifted. She'd practiced 8 hours a day and loved every minute of it. The piano wasn't just an instrument to her. It was breath. It was language. It was the only place she'd ever felt completely herself. Then her father got sick. Not regular sick, the kind of sick that eats through savings accounts and college funds and retirement plans. Cancer, the doctors said. Treatable, they said, but treatment cost money. Lots of it. Her mother worked 2 jobs, but it wasn't enough. Her younger brother was still in high school. Someone had to help. Someone had to step up, so Maria left school. No dramatic goodbye, no final performance. She just packed her things, took the bus home, and started looking for work. That was 6 years ago. Her father was better now, thanks to the treatment. He walked with a cane and got tired easily, but he was alive. That's what mattered. That's what Maria told herself every single day. She found the warehouse 3 years ago. An old industrial building on the east side, mostly empty, scheduled for demolition that kept getting delayed. One of the units had a piano. Not a Steinway, not anything fancy. Just an old upright with some keys that stuck in a slightly sour middle C. But it was there and no one else was. And the building manager let her come in at night for $20 a month. That's where she really lived. Not in her tiny apartment with the noisy neighbors. Not here at the hotel where she was furniture with legs. In that warehouse, sitting at that beat-up piano, she was herself. She'd play for hours. Bach, Chopin, Rachmaninoff. Pieces she'd learned at school. Pieces she taught herself. Sometimes she'd cry while she played. Sometimes she'd laugh. No one was there to see it or judge it or tell her to keep it down. Her co-workers thought she was quiet, reserved. They'd invite her out for drinks after work sometimes, and she'd make excuses. They probably thought she was stuck up or antisocial. She wasn't. She just had somewhere else to be, somewhere she could breathe. Today was different, though. Today the hotel was preparing for something big. The annual gala. Maria had worked it before. It was always the same crowd, just more dressed up. Tuxedos instead of suits. Gowns instead of dresses. More champagne, more food, more people who didn't see her. The ballroom was already being set up when she finished her morning shift. Round tables with centerpieces that probably cost more than her monthly rent, a stage with special lighting, and the piano, polished until it gleamed, positioned right in the center of everything. "Big night tonight," another waitress said, passing by with a stack of linens. "They're flying in some famous pianist from Europe. Victor something. He's supposed to be amazing." Maria nodded and kept walking. Of course they were. The Hartwell Grand wouldn't hire anyone less than the best. These people expected perfection. They paid for it. She went home for a few hours, tried to nap but couldn't. Her mind kept drifting to that piano, to the gala, to all those people who would sit there, sipping expensive wine, only half listening to music they didn't really understand. She wasn't bitter. At least she tried not to be. Everyone made choices. She'd made hers. Her father was alive. That's what counted. When she returned to the hotel that evening, the energy was different. Valets were parking luxury cars. Women in glittering dresses swept through the lobby. Men checked their watches and straightened their bow ties. Maria changed into the special uniform they wore for galas, black and white, more formal, with a small gold pin that marked her as staff. She was assigned to coat check. Easy work. Take coats, hand out tickets, smile, be invisible. She could do this in her sleep. Through the doorway, she could see into the ballroom. The tables were full now. Hundreds of people laughing and talking. The kind of people who shaped the world with their decisions and their money. The kind of people who would never know her name. And there it was. The Steinway. Waiting under the lights. Beautiful and perfect and completely out of reach. Maria took a deep breath and accepted another coat from a woman dripping in diamonds. This was her life now. This was reality. The warehouse piano would be waiting for her later. After all these people went home, after the ballroom was empty again, she could wait. She'd gotten good at waiting. She had no idea that in less than an hour, everything was about to change. The pianist arrived at 7:34 p.m., 16 minutes late. Maria knew because she heard the hotel manager's stressed voice echoing through the hallway. She couldn't see much from the coat check. Just glimpses of a tall man in an expensive tuxedo being rushed toward the ballroom. "That's him," whispered Jenny, one of the servers passing by with a tray of champagne. "Victor Petrov. He plays for presidents and royalty. Can you imagine?" Maria could imagine. She'd listened to his recordings back at Juilliard. The man was technically perfect, but there was something cold about his playing. All precision, no heart. At least that's what her old professor used to say. But what did it matter? These guests wouldn't know the difference. They were here to be seen, not to listen. The lights in the ballroom dimmed. Maria could hear the murmur of conversation fading, replaced by the rustle of expensive fabric as people settled into their seats. Then silence. The kind of silence that happens when hundreds of people stop breathing at once, waiting. The first notes rang out. Clear and controlled. Chopin, if Maria wasn't mistaken. Nocturne in E-flat major. Safe choice. Beautiful but not too challenging. Perfect for a crowd like this. She went back to organizing coat tickets, trying not to think about it. But the music kept pulling at her. Every phrase, every progression. Her fingers twitched slightly, muscle memory following along with what her ears were hearing. Then something changed. The music faltered. Just slightly at first, a hesitation that most people probably didn't catch, but Maria heard it. Then it happened again. A wrong note. Another pause, longer this time. The music stopped completely. Maria's head snapped up. Through the doorway, she could see people shifting in their seats, confused. The pianist was standing now, one hand pressed to his forehead. Even from this distance, she could see he was swaying slightly. The hotel manager rushed onto the stage. There was a quick, hushed conversation. The pianist shook his head, tried to sit back down, then stood up again. The manager's face had gone pale. "Ladies and gentlemen," the pianist's voice came through the microphone, heavily accented and apologetic. "I must offer my deepest regrets. I am unwell. I cannot continue this evening's performance." The ballroom erupted. Not in anger, but in that polite, uncomfortable way wealthy people show disappointment. Concerned murmurs. Sympathetic nods. But underneath it all, Maria could feel their frustration. They'd paid good money for this evening. They'd expected perfection. The manager helped the pianist off stage. Maria watched as they disappeared through a side door, probably heading to get the man some water or call a doctor. The guests were standing now, gathering in small groups, talking in low voices. Some were already asking for their coats. The event coordinator, a sharp woman named Patricia who always looked like she was solving a crisis, was speed dialing on her phone. Maria could hear fragments of conversation. Yes, I know it's short notice. I understand, but surely. No, he just collapsed. We need someone, anyone. Each call ended the same way. No one was available. It was Friday night. Every professional pianist in the city was either already performing or too far away to make it in time. Patricia's perfectly composed expression was cracking. The gala's main donor, an older gentleman in a red bow tie, was approaching her with a look that meant trouble. Maria had seen enough of these events to know what was happening. This wasn't just about music. This was about reputation, about donations, about the hotel's standing with the city's elite. Her heart was pounding. Her hands felt sweaty. This was crazy. This was absolutely insane. She was a coat check girl. She was invisible. She was no one. But that piano was just sitting there. Empty. Silent. Maria's feet started moving before her brain caught up. She walked past the coat check counter, past the confused guests in the lobby, straight toward Patricia, who was frantically texting someone. "Excuse me." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Patricia didn't look up. "Not now, please. I'm dealing with a situation." "I know. I can help." That made Patricia look up. Her eyes were red-rimmed with stress. "Unless you know a concert pianist who can be here in 5 minutes, I don't think I can play." The words hung in the air between them. Patricia stared at her like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. Behind them, the hotel manager had returned and caught the end of the conversation. "What?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Who can play?" "She says she can," Patricia said, her voice flat with disbelief. The manager looked Maria up and down. His expression was a mix of desperation and skepticism. You're a waitress. I was a student at Juilliard." Maria's voice was steadier now. 3 years. Full scholarship. I can play what he was going to play. "I know the pieces." The manager opened his mouth, probably to say no, to tell her this was ridiculous, that she needed to get back to work. But Patricia put a hand on his arm. "We have nothing else," she said quietly. "Everyone's about to leave. The Ashford Foundation was going to announce a major donation tonight. If this event falls apart," she didn't need to finish. Maria could see the calculation happening behind the manager's eyes. The risk of letting a staff member perform versus the certainty of complete failure. "You get 1 minute," he said finally. "One, you sit at that piano and prove you can play. Not like a hobbyist. Like a professional. If you can't, you get up immediately and go back to work. Understood?" Maria nodded. Her whole body was shaking now, but not from fear. From something else. Something that had been locked away for 6 years, pressing against her chest, demanding to be let out. They walked toward the ballroom together. Guests were still milling about, some heading toward the exits. The stage lights were still on, the Steinway still waiting. As they entered, a few people noticed them. The whispers started. "Is that a waitress? What's going on? Are they serious right now?" Patricia walked to the microphone. She cleared her throat and the room gradually quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a possible solution to this evening's unexpected situation. We ask for your patience for just 1 moment." Maria walked across the stage. Each step felt like it took an hour. The lights were hot on her face. She could see hundreds of eyes following her, most of them skeptical, some amused. She was still wearing her coat check uniform. Her shoes were the comfortable, practical kind, not heels. She probably looked ridiculous. She reached the piano bench and sat down. The Steinway was even more beautiful up close. The keys gleamed under the lights. She could smell the wood polish. Maria placed her hands on the keys. They felt cool and smooth, exactly like she'd imagined. She took 1 breath. 2. The ballroom was completely silent now. Waiting. Judging. She closed her eyes and began to play. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor filled the room. Not the safe, easy Chopin that Petrov had chosen. Something harder. Something that would prove beyond any doubt whether she belonged here or not. Her fingers moved across the keys like they were coming home. The first chord crashed through the ballroom like a wave, deep and powerful, the kind of sound that makes your chest vibrate. Maria felt it in her bones, in her blood, in places that had been numb for 6 years. Her eyes were still closed. She didn't want to see their faces, not yet. Right now it was just her and the piano and the music that had lived inside her all this time, waiting. The prelude was dark and dramatic. It demanded everything from the person playing it. Technical skill, yes, but also emotion, raw feeling. You couldn't fake your way through Rachmaninoff. Either you understood what he was trying to say, or you didn't. Maria understood. Her fingers flew across the keys, moving through the complicated passages like water flowing downhill. Natural, inevitable. She'd played this piece 1,000 times in that warehouse, always wishing someone could hear it. Now hundreds of people were hearing it, and she couldn't think about that or she'd lose her nerve. So she thought about her father instead, the way he'd looked in that hospital bed, trying to smile even though she could see the pain in his eyes. The way he'd told her to go back to school, that they'd figure it out somehow. The way she'd lied and said she would, knowing she never could. She thought about her mother working those 2 jobs, falling asleep on the couch with her work shoes still on. She thought about her brother graduating high school, going to community college because that's all they could afford now. She thought about every morning she'd woken up at 5 a.m. to catch the bus. Every table she'd wiped down. Every coat she'd taken from people who never said thank you. Every night in that empty warehouse playing for an audience of dust and shadows. All of it poured into the music. Every sacrifice. Every quiet moment of grief for the life she'd given up. Every stubborn spark of hope that somehow, someday, things might be different. The music built to its climax. The notes cascading over each other faster and faster until the final, thunderous chords rang out. Maria's hands lifted from the keys. The last note faded into silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The ballroom was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Then someone started clapping. Slow at first, then faster. Then someone else joined in. Then another. Then the whole room erupted. Maria opened her eyes. People were standing. All of them. Their faces weren't skeptical anymore. Some looked shocked. Some looked moved, their eyes shining. The woman in the front row, dripping in diamonds, was actually crying. The applause kept going. It rolled over her in waves, and Maria sat there, stunned, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't polite golf clapping. This was real. They were actually impressed. Patricia was on the side of the stage, her mouth hanging open. The hotel manager looked like someone had just explained quantum physics to him. Even some of the other staff members had gathered in the doorway staring. More, someone shouted from the crowd. Play something else. Other voices joined in. Yes, please. Don't stop! Maria looked at Patricia, who just nodded, still seeming dazed. The hotel manager made a gesture that might have been approval or might have been surrender. Maria wasn't sure which. Her hands were shaking as she placed them back on the keys, but it was a good shake now, the kind that comes from adrenaline and joy mixing together. She played Debussy next. Clair de Lune, softer, gentler. After the storm of Rachmaninoff, she wanted to give them something beautiful and peaceful, something that would make them feel like they were floating. This time she kept her eyes open. She watched as the music worked its way through the room, saw shoulders relaxing, saw people leaning back in their chairs, letting the melody wash over them. An older man in the second row closed his eyes, a small smile on his face. A younger couple held hands. This was why she'd fallen in love with music in the first place. Not for the applause or the recognition, for this, the way it could change a room, the way it could make strangers feel connected to something larger than themselves. When she finished, the applause came again. Warmer this time, appreciative in a different way. One more, someone called out. Others agreed. Maria played 4 more pieces. She lost track of time. It could have been 20 minutes or an hour. Nothing existed except the piano and the music and this impossible moment that was actually happening. She ended with Chopin. Nocturne in E-flat major. The same piece the famous pianist had started with. But where his version had been technically perfect but cold, Maria's was warm, human. It breathed and swayed and spoke directly to the heart. As the final notes faded, she finally lifted her hands from the keys for the last time. The applause this time was deafening. People were on their feet again and they weren't stopping. Some were taking out their phones, recording, taking pictures. Maria could see the flashes going off. Then something unexpected happened. A woman stood up in the middle section. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with silver hair and an elegant navy dress. There was something familiar about her face, but Maria couldn't place it. "Excuse me," the woman called out, her voice cutting through the applause. The room quieted. "May I say something?" Patricia nodded, looking confused but interested. The woman walked toward the stage, and with each step, Maria's heart beat faster. She knew that walk. She knew that face, Professor Chen, her teacher from Juilliard. "I recognize this young woman," Professor Chen said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. She looked up at Maria, and there were tears in her eyes. "She was my student, 6 years ago. One of the most talented pianists I've ever taught in 30 years of teaching." The room buzzed with whispers. Professor Chen climbed the steps to the stage and stood beside the piano. "You disappeared," she said to Maria, her voice softer now, meant just for her even though everyone could hear. "One day you were there practicing until midnight, working harder than anyone. The next day you were gone. No explanation. No goodbye. I tried to find you. I called. I emailed. Nothing." Maria's throat was tight. "I'm sorry," she managed to say. "I had to leave. My family. My father. What happened?" Professor Chen's expression was concerned now, not accusatory. Maria looked out at the sea of faces. All these wealthy, powerful people watching her, waiting for her to explain why someone with her talent was working as a waitress instead of performing in concert halls. She took a deep breath. "My father got cancer. Stage 3. The treatment was expensive. Really expensive. My mom was working 2 jobs, but it wasn't enough. Someone had to help pay the bills. Someone had to make sure my little brother could stay in school. So I left Juilliard and came home." The ballroom was silent again, but this was a different kind of silence, heavy with understanding. "I got a job here," Maria continued. "I've been working here for 3 years. And at night I play piano in an empty warehouse, because I couldn't stop. Even after everything, I couldn't stop playing." A man in the front row stood up. He was maybe 50, with gray at his temples and the kind of presence that said he was used to being in charge. "What's your name?" he asked. "Maria." "Maria, I'm Robert Chen. I run the Ashford Foundation." He paused. "That's quite a story." Robert Chen didn't sit back down. He stood there looking at Maria with an expression she couldn't quite read. The whole ballroom seemed to be holding its breath again. "The Ashford Foundation," he said slowly, "was created 15 years ago when my sister died. She was a violinist, incredibly talented, but she got sick in her 2nd year at conservatory, and the medical bills destroyed our family financially. By the time she recovered, it was too late. She'd lost too much time. Lost her scholarship. She never played professionally again." His voice caught slightly on those last words. Maria could see the pain in his face even after all these years. "She worked in a bookstore until she died. She was 43. He paused. "Every day I wondered how many others there were. How many talented people who had to give up their dreams because life got in the way, because they had to choose between their gift and their family." He looked around the ballroom at all the wealthy faces. "We throw money at a lot of causes. We write checks and feel good about ourselves. But we're not fixing the real problem. We're not catching people when they fall through the cracks." Another person stood up, a woman in a red dress with kind eyes. "I agree. This shouldn't happen. Not in a city this wealthy. Not anywhere." Then another person stood. And another. The gentleman with the red bow tie, the one who'd been angry about the pianist canceling, rose to his feet. "I'd like to hear more about your father's situation. About what actually happened." Maria felt exposed, vulnerable. These weren't her people. This wasn't her world. But Professor Chen put a gentle hand on her shoulder, encouraging her. "The cancer was in his lungs," Maria said. "He never smoked a day in his life, but there it was. The doctor said it was treatable, but the treatment costs were massive. Even with insurance, we were looking at tens of thousands in out-of-pocket expenses. My mom was working as a school secretary and cleaning houses on weekends. My brother was 16, and I was at Juilliard on scholarship, but scholarship doesn't cover living expenses, doesn't cover books or food or the subway pass to get to class." She could feel her voice getting stronger as she talked. This was her truth. She didn't need to hide it anymore. "I did the math. If I came home, got a full-time job, I could send money back, help with the bills, make sure my brother could finish high school without having to work, make sure my dad got the treatment he needed." She looked at Professor Chen. "I'm sorry I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't. If I'd come to your office, if I'd explained everything, you would have tried to help. And I couldn't accept help. Not when my family was drowning." "Oh, my dear girl," Professor Chen said softly, her eyes full of tears. Robert Chen was typing something on his phone. "What hospital was your father treated at?" "What was the total cost?" Maria told him. She'd memorized those numbers. They'd haunted her for years. $147,000. That's what it cost to save her father's life. And how much do you still owe? 72,000. We've been paying it down slowly. 500 a month, Robert made a note. Then he looked up at the crowd. Here's what I'm thinking. The Ashford Foundation is supposed to be about creating opportunities, real opportunities, not just scholarships for people who already have support systems. What if we created something different? A program for people exactly like Maria, talented individuals who had to stop their education or training because of family crisis. The woman in red nodded enthusiastically. A safety net, with both financial support and career guidance. Medical, expense coverage, added another. Voice from the back, and flexible scheduling, so people can complete their education while supporting their families. Professor Chen chimed in. The ideas started flowing faster, people calling out suggestions. A tech entrepreneur offered to build a platform to identify and track candidates. A hospital administrator talked about partnering with medical centers to reduce costs for families. A lawyer offered to help structure the program properly. Maria stood on the stage watching these powerful people completely redesign their gala evening around her story. It felt surreal, like she was watching it happen to someone else. Robert Chen looked back at her. Maria, here's my proposal. The Ashford Foundation will pay off your father's remaining medical debt. All of it. As of tonight, your family owes nothing. Maria's legs went weak. She had to grab the piano for support. What? And Professor Chen, can she still complete her degree? Professor Chen was already nodding. We've done it before for students who had to leave. It takes longer, requires independent study and periodic check-ins, but yes, if Maria wants to finish, we can make it happen. I'll fund it, said the woman in red. Tuition, living expenses, everything. Wait, Maria said, her voice shaking. I can't. This is too much. I don't understand what's happening. Robert walked up onto the stage. Up close, she could see he had kind eyes. Sad eyes, but kind. What's happening is that we're fixing a broken system. One person at a time. You shouldn't have had to choose. No one should. But why me? There are thousands of people. You're right. There are, and we can't help them all. But we can start somewhere. He gestured to the room. Everyone here is going to leave tonight and tell this story. Some of them will write checks. Some will volunteer. Some will create their own programs. That's how change happens. Not all at once, but one story at a time. A younger man in the audience raised his hand. I recorded the performance. With your permission, Maria, I'd like to post it. I work in media. This kind of story, people need to hear it. Maria looked at Professor Chen, who squeezed her shoulder. It's your choice. Will it help? Maria asked. Will it help other people like me? The media guy nodded. If we tell it right, yes. I think it will. Then okay. The ballroom erupted in applause again, but this time it felt different. It wasn't just about her playing anymore. It was about something bigger, something that mattered beyond one evening. Patricia appeared at the edge of the stage, still looking slightly shell-shocked. So, should we continue with dinner service? Everyone laughed. The tension broke. People started sitting back down, but the conversations continued. Business cards were being exchanged. Phones were out, people making notes and connections. Robert pulled out his own card and handed it to Maria. Come to my office Monday morning. We have a lot to discuss, and bring your family. I want to meet them. Professor Chen hugged her tight. I have to go make some calls. But we're going to figure this out. You're finishing your degree. I don't care how long it takes. The hotel manager appeared, looking completely bewildered. Miss Maria, I don't even know what to say. Should you still be working co-check or? She's done for the night, Robert said firmly. Someone get this woman a proper seat and a proper meal. One of the servers, Jenny, rushed up with a glass of water. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard, she whispered. I didn't know. All this time working together, I didn't know. No one did, Maria said softly. Well, we know now, Jenny said. And girl, you're never checking coats again. Not if I have anything to say about it. Maria laughed, and it felt good. When was the last time she'd really laughed? She couldn't remember. The video went viral in 3 days. Maria was at the warehouse practicing like she always did when her phone started blowing up. Text messages, missed calls, notifications she didn't understand. She finally stopped playing and checked. The video had 4 million views. 4 million. People from countries she'd never even heard of were commenting, sharing, crying over her story. This made me believe in humanity again. I'm not crying. You're crying. This is what the world needs more of. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the comments. Some people shared their own stories. A dancer who'd quit to care for a sick parent. A writer who'd given up their dreams to work 3 jobs. A singer who practiced in their car during lunch breaks because it was the only time they had. You gave us hope, one comment said. Thank you for showing us we're not alone. Maria sat on the warehouse floor and cried. Good tears this time. Healing tears. By the end of the week, the Ashford Foundation had received over 200 applications from people in similar situations. Musicians, artists, athletes, scientists, all of them talented, all of them derailed by circumstances beyond their control. Robert Chen called her personally. We're overwhelmed. In the best way possible. We're going to need your help building this program. If you're willing. Me? I don't know anything about running a foundation. You know what it feels like to fall through the cracks. That's more valuable than any business degree. The following Monday, Maria brought her family to meet Robert at his office downtown. Her father walked slowly with his cane, but he was smiling. Her mother kept fussing with her hair, nervous about meeting someone so important. Her brother, now 22 and working at a grocery store while taking night classes, looked around the fancy building with wide eyes. Robert met them in the lobby personally. No assistance, no formality. He shook her father's hand gently. Mr. Torres, it's an honor to meet you. Your daughter is extraordinary. Her father's eyes filled with tears. She gave up everything for us. I told her not to. I told her to go back to school. She made a choice out of love, Robert said. That's not something to feel guilty about. That's something to be proud of. But now we're going to make sure she doesn't have to choose anymore. The meeting lasted 2 hours. They signed papers that cleared the medical debt. Maria watched her mother's face as Robert explained that they owed nothing, zero. The weight that had pressed on their family for 6 years just disappeared. Don't understand, her mother kept saying. Why would you do this for us? Because I couldn't do it for my sister, Robert said simply. But I can do it for others. That has to mean something. Professor Chen had arranged everything for Maria's return to Juilliard. Modified schedule. Independent study. She could work at her own pace while still helping her family. It would take 3 years instead of 1, but she'd finish. She'd graduate. And after that? Maria asked. What then? Then you play, Professor Chen said. Concert halls, recordings, teaching if you want. The world needs to hear you, really hear you. But something else happened that no one expected. The hotel didn't fire Maria. Instead, the owner called her into his office. She'd been terrified, certain she was about to lose her job for overstepping. I've been thinking, he said. We pride ourselves on being the finest hotel in the city. But we've been blind. We have talented people working here, and we treat them like they're invisible. He offered her a new position, artist in residence. She'd play at special events but also give lessons to staff members who wanted to learn, create music programs for local schools, represent what the hotel could be, what it should be. You'll make 3 times what you were making, and you can set your own schedule around your studies. Maria took the job, not because she needed to anymore, because she wanted to, because that piano in the ballroom deserved to be played, and because the staff, her friends, deserved to be seen. 3 weeks after that night, Maria gave her first official performance. Not at a concert hall, at a community center in her own neighborhood. Free admission, first come, first served. The line wrapped around the block. Families came, kids in worn-out sneakers, elderly people who'd lived in the neighborhood for 50 years, people who'd never been to a classical music concert because they couldn't afford tickets or didn't feel welcome in fancy venues. Maria played for 2 hours. Everything from classical to jazz to popular songs arranged for piano. In the front row sat her father, her mother, and her brother. Behind them, Robert Chen and Professor Chen sat side by side. Jenny from the hotel was there with half the staff. Patricia, the event coordinator, had tears streaming down her face the whole time. But the person who surprised Maria most was Viktor Petrov, the famous pianist who'd gotten sick that night. He'd recovered and heard about what happened. He showed up unannounced and asked if he could say something. I have played for kings and presidents, he told the crowd, in the most prestigious halls in the world, but I have never heard anyone play with the heart that this young woman has. Technique can be taught. Precision can be practiced. But passion, that is a gift. And Maria has reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. He asked if they could play a duet. Right there, in that community center with the folding chairs and the water-stained ceiling, Maria played with one of the most famous pianists in the world, and it felt right. It felt real. After the performance, people lined up to talk to her, not to ask for autographs, to tell their stories, to thank her, to say they felt seen. An older woman grabbed her hand. My granddaughter wants to be a singer, but we can't afford lessons. I was going to tell her to forget it, to be realistic. But after seeing you, maybe dreams don't have to die. Maybe they just wait. That's when Maria understood what had really happened that night at the gala. It wasn't just about her getting a second chance. It was about showing people that second chances were possible, that circumstances don't define destiny, that talent and dreams don't have an expiration date. The Ashford Foundation funded 23 people in its first year. A ballet dancer who'd been working construction, a classical guitarist who'd been driving trucks, a painter who'd given up art to become an accountant. Each one got financial support, medical coverage, and career mentoring. Maria became the face of the program. She spoke at events, helped review applications, and met with each new recipient personally. She understood their stories because she'd lived one just like it. 2 years later, she graduated from Juilliard. Her whole family was there. Robert brought flowers. Professor Chen cried through the entire ceremony. The hotel staff rented a bus and came together, cheering embarrassingly loud when Maria's name was called. She got offers to tour. Record labels reached out, but Maria made a different choice. She'd perform, yes, but she'd also teach. She'd work with the foundation. She'd play at community centers and schools and anywhere people needed to remember that beauty exists even in hard times. The warehouse where she used to practice alone got bought by a developer. Before they demolished it, Maria went back one last time. She sat at that old out-of-tune piano and played. For the empty room. For the version of herself who used to cry here. For everyone who'd ever had to hide their light just to survive. Then she locked the door and walked away. She didn't need that place anymore. She had concert halls now, and community centers, and a ballroom with a Steinway that she could play whenever she wanted. But more than that, she had proof that one moment of courage could change everything. That night at the gala, when she'd walked across that stage in her coat check uniform, she'd been terrified. She'd thought she was just trying to save an event, maybe keep her job. But really, she'd been saving herself, and in doing so, she'd helped save others too. That's how change happens. Not with grand gestures from people who have everything, but with small acts of bravery from people who have nothing left to lose. One song at a time, one story at a time, one person at a time, Maria played on.